So I'm a managing partner at Brabners. So my background as a lawyer, I'm a commercial lawyer. I don't do a great deal of client work anymore, so I do still nominally sit in the commercial and IP team because I want to remain in a team, and that's my background, but my role is almost entirely just the leadership role of managing partner. I've got a degree in law and economics, a BA, not LLB, from the University of Leicester a long time ago. I was at university 91 to 94, and I then qualified as a solicitor in 1997. I think there's probably two reasons why I consciously decided or thought that the solicitor route was going to be a better fit than barrister. I'd say the first one is around client interaction, and I know that through time things have changed. So when I qualified, barristers didn't have direct access to clients, where now increasingly they can do. But for me, part of the appeal of the solicitor's route was the fact that you're really in amongst it, you're in the trenches with the clients, whereas barristers naturally tend to be one step removed. And then secondly, it was about being part of a team. Again, I know barristers ultimately within their chambers are part of a team, but they tend naturally to work in a slightly more sort of solitary way, whereas I thought joining a solicitor's firm, it's going to play more into my hands of hopefully being a good team player, and you just tend to work more closely with more colleagues, so that really appealed to me. So before I applied, I did try and get some legal work experience, and from memory, it's quite some time ago, I think I did have 1 week's worth of work experience at a firm, so not a great deal. And I think it is really important, because I do think if you haven't got any legal work experience on your CV or in the application to talk about, there's a risk that, number one, it would maybe raise a doubt as to your commitment to the profession, and also number two, you know, just how driven and keen you are, and how do you actually know you want to be a lawyer if you've never worked in a law firm. Now, I know in practice often it can be a challenge to get work experience, and certainly, you know, at Brabners we're working hard to try and improve access to work placement schemes, work insight days. You know, we do now, for example, pay the living wage, or we pay work experience candidates based on the living real wage, accepting that particularly those from a sort of less privileged background, access to work experience is particularly hard. So I do think it's important. We do recognise it can be challenging to get work experience, but somehow, one way or another, I think if you're not able to point to some legal work experience, you're going to be at a real disadvantage. My own experience was, yes, I had a week's worth of work experience to talk about, but I think more importantly in my case, I think work experience beyond just law, and dare I say it, life experience, was equally as important, because it's not just about saying you've worked at lots of different law firms. Being able to show sort of breadth of experience, you know, paid for work, jobs, different areas, not just law. I personally think that's just as valuable. So the qualification process at Brabners, I think we're still fairly typical in as much as, whilst absolutely we're embracing the new routes to qualification, so SQE, apprenticeship routes, which will mean over time that the way in which solicitors qualify and the times at which they qualify will become a lot more varied, and they won't all sort of move through the process as a cohort and all start on the same day and qualify on the same day. So I think over time it will become more varied, but still in our case the majority of our trainees have come through the fairly traditional route, so they do tend to start together as a cohort. So typically they start in September, which then means they have a training contract of 4 6-month seats. So going from the third to the final seat, that switch happens in March. So what we always try and do at Brabners is give as much certainty and clarity as early as possible. Mindful both that as trainees approach the sort of home straight of their training contract, You know, if you're not certain as to what the outcome's going to be or what your future looks like, that's not great. It can create anxiety. And also from our perspective, we're more at risk of losing good candidates. So we always try and bring forward the process as early as possible. We encourage all our trainees to do a varied training contract, so we do our best to accommodate preferences, but we're keen that the first 3 seats are quite varied, so you get a broad range of experience before you choose what you might want to qualify into. And then we seek, before the 4th seat starts, to ask all our then second year trainees what their preferences upon qualification are. In the meantime, in parallel with that, we're speaking to our heads of department to get a sense about vacancies, and then we aim to sort of marry that up around February time. So we always aim by the end of every February for all our second year trainees to know what roles are going to be there upon qualification. If that marries up with what they want, then they've got certainty. If there's more than one colleague who want to go for the same job, then it's an interview process. But the aim ultimately is to have that concluded by March, so that as the trainees go into their last seat, they know what the longer term looks like. I'd say the thing I wished, with hindsight, I'd known as a trainee at the time was that it was going to be okay. I'm not naturally an anxious person, I'm naturally quite laid back, but I can remember I found the 2 years quite intense. I put myself under a lot of pressure to succeed. That pressure of getting a job at the end of it, 2 years does seem like a relatively small window to impress. And my reflection looking back with the benefit of a lot of hindsight is, you know, if you give it your all, you do your absolute best, you learn from your mistakes, success in one way, shape or form will often follow. It's going to be okay. So when I hark back to my trainee days, I don't think there's any single case or matter that stands out that I'm particularly happy or pleased I was involved in, or that I particularly remember. It's more an area of work. So in my training contract, I started with 6 months in litigation, I then did 6 months in real estate, and then I did 6 months in corporate department, and that was when it really came to life for me. So I really enjoyed doing M&A work for a number of reasons really. One, it felt like you were really in the sort of cut and thrust of business law, a lot of client interaction, a lot of rolling sleeves up and getting involved in big complex projects that were multidisciplinary, multifaceted, and I just really enjoyed, I guess, the sort of size and complexity of the matters. It was something that you could really dive into. So that gave me absolute certainty that I wanted to focus on business law. I then did qualify as a corporate solicitor. Ironically, that's actually not what I ended up doing over the longer term. So over time, I naturally morphed away from corporate law into commercial IP, the sort of natural bedfellows, but I did move away from M&A work. But certainly during those 6 months, being involved in corporate deals really made me realise I wanted to be involved in business. If I think about my typical day now, naturally I don't do very much client work anymore. I guess one of the downsides and consequences of becoming managing partner is I'm now some way removed from client work. I still have, and it's important to me that I've maintained all my client relationships. A lot of my clients, those relationships go back a long way, and I consider some of them close personal friends. So I've certainly not removed myself from clients, but in terms of doing the actual work, I actually do very little because, bluntly, I don't have the time. My time is focused purely on, or almost purely on, the managing partner role, so it's a sort of leadership role rather than as a jobbing lawyer. But I'm not entirely divorced from client work. So a job I've recently done, which really reflects a fairly typical job for me. My background is mainly commercial and IP work. Most of the work I've done through my career has tended to be in the software game development space, so for a number of software game developers, typically helping them negotiate development and publishing deals. So the most recent one that I worked on was for a client called Lucid Games, who are a Liverpool-based software game developer, and they were one of the few third-party developers to develop a software game for the launch of the PlayStation 5. So I assisted them in negotiating their deal with Sony for that. So I see my role as managing partner as broadly falling into three categories. So I aim to lead from the front, lead by example. Together with the leadership team, my focus is on setting the strategy, setting the direction of the firm, trying to instill a sense of energy, drive and ambition, and creating an environment for colleagues to really feel encouraged and empowered to step up and contribute. But if I was to break down the component parts of that, they broadly fall into three categories, and that's people, profile and clients. So the majority of my time and focus, aside from strategy, is really in those three pots. So with people, that will mean time I spend on recruitment. So I spend a lot of time talking to potential lateral hires at the senior end, potential growth opportunities, whether that be teams or firms. I spend a lot of time with existing colleagues, trying to encourage and empower them, nurture their ambition, support them however I can. And then the partnership. So I have 85 partners and they need managing as a group. As the title suggests, managing partner, I spend quite some time managing my partners. So that's people. Profile will cover things like marketing, raising awareness of the firm, speaking at events like this. It's a sort of ambassadorial role in a way, just trying to promote and raise awareness about our firm. And then the third category of clients, obviously I still have clients of my own, but I do all I can to help both nurture existing client relationships. So I'll spend time with large clients of the firm. It's not my relationship, I might not know them personally, but as managing partner of our firm, I want them to feel valued, and I want them to have an opportunity to share their thoughts on what perhaps we could be doing better or where we're doing well. And then also prospective clients, so I will do what I can to help others win business and win clients, and sometimes it's maybe helpful to have the managing partner involved in that conversation, so I'm happy to help out wherever I can. When I'm asked how does Brabners stand out from the rest, how do we stand out from the crowd, I'd say there's probably two or three key themes. One is our independence. We're very proud of being an independent law firm, and that can mean different things to different people, but I think being able to sort of demonstrate that we're not a massive corporate behemoth. We're of a size that, broadly speaking, we get to do what we want to do. We're not beholden to external stakeholders, and we maybe have a bit more freedom and flexibility than other larger firms. Culture is really important. A lot of law firms will rightly talk a lot about culture, as do we, but we think we can back it up with lots of awards and accolades that corroborate what we say, and that really is about a culture that's built on four key values that we have. So one is to be ambitious. We make no bones about we are ambitious, but our other three values are to stand together, to do what's right, and to show you care. And I think those three really reflect the culture of our organisation, which is a very people-oriented firm. It's of a decent size. We have 480 colleagues, but we work hard to try and retain a real family feel. So yes, we're there to do good work for great clients, surrounded by great lawyers, and we take our clients and our client work seriously, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. So I think retaining that sense of fun is quite important. Our profession, I think, is a very rewarding one, but we shouldn't sugarcoat it. It can be tough, and hard work is needed, so I think it's doubly important to try and find fun in what we do. So trying to retain that sense of, yes, we're a proper firm that does good work, but actually it's a nice place to work. And nice is an interesting word. A lot of people are very reluctant to use the word nice. I'm actually very comfortable using it. I make no bones about the fact that we're a nice firm full of nice people. I think the key attributes to be able to make it as a solicitor, and this really applies at all stages, both during training, early years, post-qualification, but they never really go away. I think number one is having the ability to build relationships and to create trust. I think those two together, they are interlinked, are the most important thing, both in terms of relationships with colleagues, with clients, with prospects. You could be in theory, the best lawyer, the most academically gifted person, but unless you're able to win the trust of clients, prospects and colleagues, I think you'll find it hard to succeed. So then, well, what engenders trust? What enables you to build relationships? I think it's really important to demonstrate empathy, to have humility, to be a good listener. All fairly simple, basic human qualities, but all critical. I think being a good team player is really important. Yes, there's a lot you can achieve off your own bat, but without a team around you, it's going to be a whole lot harder. Our profession predominantly is very much team-based. Most jobs are done in teams, so being able to work as part of a team is critical. And I also think having some drive is important. As I've said before, my experience is it's been a phenomenally rewarding, it is a rewarding profession, but it's not necessarily for the faint-hearted. And that's not just about working hard, and it's not about presenteeism. It absolutely should be about working smart, not necessarily working hard. But I do think without a sense of ambition and drive to really make it and fulfill your potential, you might fall short. So I think having that drive, and courage actually. Courage is another quality I think is critically important, and I choose that word carefully. It's different from confidence, and particularly for young lawyers, I wouldn't expect young lawyers to have too much confidence necessarily, and actually there's sometimes a concern that young lawyers who seem to be overconfident, it can stray into arrogance, it can create risk. For me, courage is different in as much as you might not have the confidence to do something, but having the courage to back yourself and give it a go, I think is really important. So I think to be driven and courageous are important qualities to have. So COVID-19 was a really interesting, challenging time for our firm and the profession. And to be clear, I'm not in any way wanting to suggest there's a silver lining. It was and remains a really difficult period of time where lots of people suffered in lots of different ways. That said, I do think our profession, like many others, particularly in professional services, has emerged as a stronger profession because of it. Number one, I think law firms in particular now are far more focused on well-being, and secondly, sort of linked, have embraced agile, flexible working because they had no choice. And I think those two things largely remain and will continue, and I think they are a good thing for a whole host of reasons. Not least, I think it will enable our profession to attract a much more diverse pool of talent. And I also think that it demonstrated the importance of trust and being a values-based organisation. So when everyone had no choice but to return home in March 2020 and work remotely, firms had no choice but to trust their colleagues. They were out of sight, not out of mind, but they were out of sight. And largely, our profession demonstrated that it rose to the challenge, and colleagues did adapt. They were able to work productively and effectively from home, largely speaking, with lots of challenges, obviously. And I think this then has fed through to the endurance of flexible, agile working. Colleagues have generally proven they can be trusted. So I know some firms are at different stages of trying to encourage colleagues to spend more time in the office. Our view is very much to not be prescriptive and to trust our colleagues as we did then. They absolutely demonstrated that trust wasn't misplaced. So our view is, why change our approach now? So I do think, as challenging as that period was, I think some positives have come from it, and it does look like they are going to endure, and I think that will make our profession more appealing. So equality, diversity and inclusion, amongst other things, is rightly getting far more prominence within our profession and professional services. Before I maybe dive into what are we doing in the EDI space, I'll maybe take a broader view, if I may. So we are very much a sort of purpose-driven organisation, and we do have a clear sense of purpose that, you know, business can and should bring about positive change. You know, business needn't be a dirty word, it can actually be the answer. We're a B Corp. We were one of the first law firms to get B Corp accreditation, which really demonstrates from a social and environmental perspective, we take our responsibilities seriously. So we, as a B Corp, measure ourselves what they call a triple P bottom line, so profit. We are a private enterprise that seeks to be profitable, and we make no bones about that, but we try and place equal prominence on people and planet. So when we assess, you know, how is the firm doing, yes, we assess financial and business performance, and that's around how we're performing as standing out as employer of choice, strong brand, satisfied clients, sustainable revenue growth and superior financial performance. But we try and put just as much prominence on our three brand pillars, which are around diversity, sustainability and innovation. So drilling down into the diversity or EDI strand, what we've done at Brabners is in 2018 we created a committee called the TAG Group, Together Action Group. I like an acronym, so there's lots of acronyms for groups at Brabners. But our TAG Group is a committee of, I think there's 7 or 8 of us, and I sit on it to demonstrate. We really do take it seriously and it's important. So I think to have a managing partner sitting on that group probably tells its own story. And then in turn, we've drilled down into, well, what does that group seek to achieve? What do our colleagues seek to achieve? This is very much about building from the ground up. This isn't top down, imposing our way. So when we created TAG 6 years ago, we spent time talking to colleagues across the firm about, well, what's important to them. And from that came 5 areas of focus for which we've created 5 separate affinity groups. And they focus in turn on gender equality, social mobility, BAME, LGBT and physical and mental health. So each of those 5 groups are then encouraged and empowered to, broadly speaking, do what they want, to engage, to raise awareness of the event, of the issues that they're most passionate about. And that will mean there's an element of campaigning, there's initiatives, there's events, some of it's client facing, some of it's internal. But for me the main thing is to create that sense of engagement, and we have currently about 1 in 5 Brabners colleagues directly sits in one of those 5 groups. So it's really about creating an environment where our colleagues can effectively tell us, the firm, what they want the firm to focus on, not the other way around. So there's a whole myriad of different events and initiatives that between those affinity groups they'll spend time doing, but that, I'd say, is one of the critical components to both our culture, and one of the things that often stands out is what makes us a great place to work. A highlight over the last month for Brabners has probably been our inclusion, in particular 2 colleagues, in the Colleen Rooney, the real Wagatha story. So we're now, it's a blessing and a curse, we're now well known as being the Wagatha lawyers. So Colleen Rooney is a client, and we're involved in the high profile High Court case between Rebecca Vardy and Colleen Rooney. Disney Plus did a 3-part documentary based on that case. I think it aired on Disney Plus in the last month, so it is a highlight of the last month. And 2 colleagues of mine in particular, Paul Lunt, who's a partner who led the case, and a colleague who actually since left, who's emigrated to New Zealand, unrelated, a guy called Jamie Howarth, who both represented Colleen brilliantly and successfully. They were particularly prominent in the 3rd of the 3 episodes. So I have to say I was really proud of them. They came across well. There was the odd cliche and cringe moment, but broadly speaking, I thought they did brilliantly. And I think they actually did a good job of helping to articulate in a relatable way what the case was about. Clearly there was a lot of press attention, and as soon as you mention anything to do with footballers or wags, there's a real sort of celeb element to it, but actually at the heart of that was a legal case. So I thought they did a good job of articulating the case. And also a lot of the scenes where they were filmed was in our Manchester office at Barbaroli Square, which, though I say so myself, I thought came across really well. It's a really cool office space, we're really proud of it, and I thought that starred as well as Paul and Jamie. So that's been a highlight for the last month. But the blessing is it's given us a lot of profile, which is great. I'm not complaining. I guess the curse is, in the eyes of a lot of people, we're now known as the Wagatha lawyers. We've got a lot more about us than just Wagatha, but if people want to know us for that, that's fine. When I was deciding which firms to apply for, I took really 4 things into account. Location, size, focus and culture. So location, I'm from Liverpool. I made a conscious decision to stay in the Northwest, so I only applied to firms in Liverpool and Manchester. Size, I made a conscious decision that I didn't want to apply to any massive firms. That's not knocking them at all, but I decided I would be better suited to more of a medium-sized firm. So I didn't want to necessarily apply to high street firms, again not knocking high street firms at all, but a sort of medium-sized firm where I wouldn't be sort of lost in the machinery of a huge corporate organisation, so I could actually make a mark during those 2 years, but it was big enough that it would have decent work. And then thirdly, the focus of the firm, I wanted to focus on commercial business law firms, so I took that into account. And then my final factor was around culture, so I wanted to apply to a firm that I thought placed importance on its people, caring for its people, was committed to its local community, and was the sort of place that I could maybe thrive at. So taking those 4 things into account from memory, and it is quite some time ago, I think I applied to about 10 firms. I've got mixed views. I know some candidates feel like it's now so hard to get a training contract, you just have to apply for everything, and they tend to scattergun and hope something sticks. Others are maybe arguably too focused and put all their eggs in 2 or 3 baskets. Personally, I think something in between. So from memory, I think I applied to about 10 firms and I interviewed at 3. I chose Brabners because they were the only one that offered me a training contract, so they chose me, not the other way around. But I think those different elements of what was I looking for, location, size, focus, culture, I think that still stands true now. I think if I was applying for a training contract now, I'd be thinking along the same lines. If I was asked to describe Brabners in 3 words, they would be independent, ambitious and progressive. I'm currently reading a book called Underway, which is the autobiography of Bob Mortimer. I'm showing my age now. My dream holiday destination would be Croatia, both because I love Croatia in and of itself, beautiful country, but I also love Italy and Greece, and Croatia is literally pretty much in the middle. And I think if you go to Croatia, you get a bit of, whether it's food, scenery, weather, you get a bit of what you get if you went to Italy and Greece. So my guilty pleasure, I'll give you two. One is margarita, the drink, not the pizza. And the second one is the 1980s. And to be clear, it's not everything about the 80s. So definitely, yes, it's the music and film, less so fashion and hairstyles.